Okay, folks, just real quickly, I want to take you through how I think it makes sense to set up your net present value for your education project. Okay, and at issue is the question of what to do to model the incremental cash flows, right? The difference in your earnings and your, quality of life from having gone to school versus from not having gone to school. Okay, so how can we figure that out? Because the thing is, right, we don't want to just look at potential income alone from school, because that doesn't look at your cost of living, right? We can't use your personal budgets as is, because all of you basically set a budget where you spend everything you make. Okay? So I was thinking on it, and here's how I think you ought to approach it. Okay. We want to look at the difference. Okay, we want to look at the difference in income levels between going and not going to school. Okay, so that's nice on the income side. But most of you guys, when you did your personal budgets, you were assuming that you were not living in rural New Hampshire. So we need to look at the difference in cost of living between where you think you want to live after school and the base case, no school. Okay, so that's the key. All right, so here's how you need to do it. Okay, here's how you need to do it. First of all, for the initial investment, it's all of your schooling costs, all of your tuition, not including room and board. So for your initial investment, it's all of your tuition, not including room and board. Okay, plus the money you didn't earn by not working full time. So that's your initial investment. Your incremental cash flows. So the calculations for the incremental cash flows. Okay. So we need to figure out the difference. Okay, so first, figure out your base case. That is, no school. Figure out your base case cash flows for all 40 years. All right, so you're going to have your base case annual salary and your base case living expenses. And we can assume that these are 90% of what you make. Each year. And we can have a base case rate of increase. Whatever percentage you want to put in there based on whatever you think would happen with inflation or whatever. Okay. So these are the first things you need to figure out based on what's given over here. Okay. Second thing is to figure out your with college situation. And so for that, you can either use your personal budget that you did earlier or the assumptions given in the assignment. So the first thing is you're going to have your with college annual salary. And then you're going to have to figure out your with college living expenses. But we want these to be apples to apples, because the thing is that you guys all made personal budgets where you're basically spending everything you make. we need to look at what's the difference in basic living expenses, right? Because if you're making a big salary that grows over the years, you're going to be able to afford things like vacations and whatnot. And so, you know, you want to recognize the difference in value that this big salary gives you. But we do have to have basic living expenses. So here's how I suggest you do the apples to apples comparison. Okay, if you go to nerdwallet.com to the cost of living calculator. See that over here? Okay, what this will do is it'll allow you to look at the difference in the cost of living between various cities, right? So in New Hampshire, the only city that they've got is Manchester. So we'll take Manchester, and if we want to move to Boston, right, you see down here that the cost of living is 40% higher in Boston than it is in Manchester, in New Hampshire. Okay, so what you have to do is assume that your basic living expenses will be related to the Manchester, New Hampshire base case by the percentage higher or lower given in NerdWallet. Okay, and so now, right, now that you have a base case annual salary, base case living expenses, and your with college rate of increase, now you can go ahead and model your cash flows. Okay, so what does that look like? For example, right now, please keep in mind that I am, you know, oversimplifying relative to what you're actually asked to do here, but I just want to show you how the relationships look. Okay, so we had our base case salary, and so I'll just show you a couple of years. So this is year 1, year 2. Okay, so our let's say our base case salary was $25,000 or whatever it was, right? And we're going to increase both the base, and then our base case living expenses were 90%. Here I'm adding a column so that we can put in our growth rates and whatnot. Right, so our base case living expenses were 90% of our salary. So that's going to be 25,000 times 90%. 22.5. Okay, we're going to grow them. That's 3%, we'll say. I don't know whether that's a number that you'd want to use, but we can go ahead and do it. So our second year's salary is going to be 25,000 times 1 plus the 3%, etc. And we're going to go ahead and, let's see, make that an absolute cell reference in both the row and the column. Okay. All right. So you can just, you know, carry this on for multiple years now that you've got it set up thusly. So there's our base case. And then our with college. I'm just setting this up again. I always like them to be fairly neat. Okay, so our with college. So let's say that you decided that you were going to start out from college at a income of $50,000. Okay. But you were going to live in Boston. So we'll say the with college salary and the with college living expenses. Now we don't want to, do your lavish lifestyle that you had developed in your in your personal budgets, right? We're just going to say, okay, we're going to compare apples to apples. So we're going to say our living expenses are going to be basically, right, the same stuff we were getting, so rent and food and electricity and, basic needs. But we are going to adjust that for the differential in living expenses for the being in Boston relative to New Hampshire. All right, so we're going to grow this by 40%. Because we see that our cost of living, basic cost of living, is 40% higher. Right, so in this row, it's going to be this times 1 plus 40%. Okay, so our basic cost of living then is going to be, instead of 22.5, it's going to be 31.5. All right, we're still going to have additional free cash flow at the end of the year, but it's not going to be the difference between 50 and 25. It's going to be the difference between our base case salary and our with college salary. As a matter of fact, you know what? Let's put another row in here, and we're going to say free cash flow. So it's going to be salary minus living expenses. Right. So it's going to grow like that. So here, let's see, we got to grow our salary. And whatever that percentage was, I can't remember. We'll say it was 4% increase a year. So the salary in the second year is going to be 4% higher. And I am going to say, you can argue with this, I'm going to say that because our with college living expenses are growing by 3% up here, which is actually probably closer to a real inflation rate, let's just go ahead and pull this one across without growing our expenses. It'll still grow by the 3% because we are adding on 40% to these, right? And so that should give us our multiple years. And then we have a free cash flow. And because our base case living expenses did not include any repayment of student loans, we don't have to deal with the fact that we're not repaying student loans in this situation here, in this with college living expenses, because we've kind of disregarded them. So we can go ahead and figure out our free cash flow differential. Okay, so if you don't go to college, in this oversimplified example, you've got $2,500 extra dollars at the end of the year that you could spend on, whatever you want. If you do go to college, you've got $20,000 or so extra above your basic needs that you could spend on things like a nicer apartment or, vacations or getting your nails done or investments or whatever. Okay? So that's how you set this up. And so now our incremental cash flow, of course, our incremental cash flow is the difference between the cash flows that we get if we go to college versus what we get if we don't. So you got $16,000 more available in your pocket in that first year etc. And the number, of course, keeps growing over time. Then you can take and do the net present value by looking at, your initial investment plus all the money that you didn't earn by not working full time during school, and then you look at the incremental cash flows that you gain, and see what the value is of your education. And I think you will find that it's a very good value.